This video is about to get very surgical. Everybody a thug till them lights pull up, and everybody got a gun until ICE pull up. A middle finger to the president, cause I ain't too impressed. How the fuck you kicking niggas out? Ain't you niggas guess, so it's death to— Let me get this straight, bruh. We've been arguing, right, or talking about this Michael Eric Dyson thing for like the better part of a month, okay? It's been clear that Michael Dyson is standing on the side of not like us is divisive, not like us is trying to de-black Drake, not like us, all these different things about the song, right? Now, don't get me wrong. I'm 100% open to growth. I'm 100% open to people having a brand new perspective after stumbling upon new information. Now, a lot of people don't do that, and a lot of people don't understand that because regardless of new information, they stand in their own ways. They stay in their own ways regardless of new information. So they don't believe that other people can find new information and change their mind or grow from that perspective. I'm not one of those people, right? I understand that this human experience is about what you learn and whether you decide to grow from what you learned or not, right? That's what this human experience is about. So I'm not taking that off the table fully, but it is to acknowledge the fact that this is a complete 180, right, of what he was saying in this Barack Obama situation, right? And Justin Hunt had already made a video about this, right? And the interesting thing is, I didn't know that there was quite literally a clip out there talking about this very thing, all right? I'm not going to waste y'all time. Let's check this out real quick.
Look,
a lack of willingness to engage.
I mean, that's his personality. That's that Hawaiian chill out personality. And that's also he ain't got the same kind of ethos, pathos, pain, hurt, and agony that black people have had. I'm not saying he's not black. That's not what I'm saying.
Okay. Okay. So, you full and well understand, right, that somebody could be black and not necessarily have the same experience as another black person, which I don't understand why that's such a big deal. I think you can be in America as a black person and not have the same experience as another black person. There are black people who didn't grow up in the projects. There are black people whose families did their due diligence, took care of things or whatever, and they lived a life that was well off. Even if it wasn't super well off, they was doing good. And then there's black people who lived in the projects. I feel like that's not so crazy to understand. But even in that aspect, there's still a level, right, of understanding between the two. Whether you lived in the suburbs or you lived in the projects, there's a level of understanding between the two that may be different from someone who doesn't live in America at all. Does that mean that their blackness is gone? Does that mean that you wipe their blackness from their experience? No. Because in reality, no matter where you are in this country, in this world, right, you probably going to experience some level of discrimination because you're black. So nobody's saying that you don't experience it all. But if you grow up in America as a black person, that might be a little different than growing up in Africa as a black person, which might be a little different than growing up in the UK as a black person, which might be different than growing up in even somewhere like Japan as a black person. That's just common sense, right? So I just want you to notice the fact that he was so quick to say, I'm not saying he's not black, which I get it. I understand what you're trying to say. I get it. Because it's not hard to understand. You're not stripping him of his blackness. You're just saying it's not the same experience just because he's black. That's not complicated. That's not hard to understand. And clearly, Michael Eric Dyson clearly understands this. Look at the conviction in which he's delivering this message. He gets it. Let's take a step back real quick.
Ethos. Also, he ain't got the same kind of ethos, pathos, pain, hurt, and agony that black people have had. I'm not saying he's not black. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying he ain't truly black. He is. Blacker than a lot of black people I know. But he didn't have that existential misery growing up in the same way. He doesn't have the same anger necessarily that black people have.
Right. And why is that, Michael Eric Dyson? Why is that? Because he might not have shared the same experience. Now, I'm pretty sure he's talking about Obama in this, right? And my whole thing is like, okay, if you're able to comprehend this, what is so difficult for you to comprehend about the Not Like Us track, right? What is so difficult for you to comprehend about the battle? Because in reality, you're giving the exact same message that Kendrick Lamar is giving, right? Even with the whole thing where they was arguing, he said Jay-Z called them and had this whole thing to say, right? Whatever. He really made it this whole big thing in his first video. Like, Jay-Z vigorously disagree with me, like knowing people were gonna try to spin that, right? My whole thing is, when you come back and say, Jay-Z, it wasn't that serious, it wasn't all the damage had from what you said, right? People have already ran with the narrative. You get what I'm saying? So while I do get that he probably was sincere in saying, oh yeah, Jay-Z didn't mean it in that way, right? I just wonder, will you backtrack this statement too or not? Right? I wonder if you're going to be willing to acknowledge the fact that you have had a sharp perspective switch, which there's nothing wrong with. But can you explain it? Because if you don't explain it, then it just seems like on the other end, right, that you just might have some allegiances with the other side. You get what I'm saying? As far as the other side of what you previously thought on your statement. So that's the part where I'm confused. Are you genuinely having a perspective switch, or are you aligned with Drake, aligned with the 50 Cents, aligned with with that, you know, that side of whatever's going on there, and now you're giving a different message, maybe intentional propaganda, right? There's a complete difference between your opinion and your perspective and you being ordered to deliver certain propaganda. There's a complete difference. And in media, we clearly don't have the ins and outs. We don't see the conversations that everybody's having, so people will speculate. But clearly, Michael Eric Dyson is in a position where his perspective is valued, right? So some people are going to come to that conclusion. I'm wondering, will this ever be addressed? And I'm not saying you got to address it, because in reality, you don't got to address it. You're your own person, and the rumblings on the internet shouldn't have to determine whether you come out and address something. If you don't want to address it, don't address it. But it's something to notice. That's all I'm saying.
Black, that's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying he ain't truly black. He is. Blacker than a lot of black people I know. But he didn't have that existential misery growing up in the same way. He doesn't have the same anger necessarily that black people have. That we are outraged by this stuff. He didn't feel it in his gut the same way. I'm not saying he ain't black. He's blacker than black. I've known Obama since '92. One of the blackest dudes I know. But what I'm saying is that your being black ain't got nothing to do with the kind of blackness and the kind of experience that you had and endured.
Right. Okay? It might have been, you know what I'm saying? I mean, I'm not somebody that believes in this whole political system thing. Like, y'all already know how I get down. I really don't believe in this. I think at the end of the day, right, whatever is most beneficial for people to say, you know what, I'm done with this two-party system, I think that's the better candidate. And that's because my perspective on what should be done is different. Some people think, oh, if you vote for this person, then we get boom, boom, boom. It's all about what your personal idea of what should happen is. My personal idea is for people to be so sick of this shit that they decide we're not participating in this two-party system. We want something new. Or legitimize independent candidates. One of the two. You feel what I'm saying? So I'm not sitting here being like, okay, we're going to get down on Michael Dyson. I understand what he's saying about Obama. It's the same way that as I grew older, I felt about Obama, right? If this was a legitimate thing, like hypothetically, right? Even Barack Obama in office, while he might be black, isn't the type of black candidate that most black Americans would imagine as being a black candidate. And you can tell by how they criticize Obama, right? When they say, hey, look, you are a black president, but how much did you really do for the black community? And we're not talking about, you know what I'm saying, the healthcare situation and all these things and the Obama phones and all that. That's cool, but we talking about you judge the level in which a certain group is living in this country based on the average civilian in that situation. Right? So I can't judge the black experience based on Jay-Z, based on Kendrick Lamar, based on all these guys. I can't do that because in reality, right, even though some may deem them for the people, some may deem however you deem them, right, they're in a different world than we are. That's reality. How you judge the well-being of a certain type of people in this country is based on the average civilian. Really, you can base it on the bottom. You can really base it on the bottom. If the bottom is surviving, if the bottom boom boom, then you understand, okay, they're doing well. If the average civilian boom boom, okay, they're doing well. Okay? What is Obama doing, or what did he do for the everyday black American? You get what I'm saying? Consistently. That probably helped push us in a better position, and not just in a better position where it can be taken away the second a new candidate comes in, because that's fake progress in my eyes, right? That's using a blue candidate to build up this fake progress just to continue the system by bringing in something else and wiping away the progress. That's fake progress that I believe is coordinated by the entire system, okay? But that's just my perspective. What was being done for the average black American? You get what I'm saying? And that answer isn't really much, especially in comparison to all the bombs and all the murders that happened overseas, to what happened to Gaddafi, to what happened in Libya, to what's still going on in Libya, right? That you put in more time and energy into that than to your people, which is why the whole buying into the whole black president thing was bullshit in hindsight. So I get what Michael Dyson is saying here. Why can't you get what Kendrick is saying in accordance to Drake? Because the rapping might be, look, if we're giving Michael Dyson the benefit of the doubt, that might be what the fuck it is for real. He might not be able to see the legitimacy in the message because it's on a rap song. What if that's the case? What if there isn't some grand conspiracy? What if it's not due to the allegiances? What if just in the mind of Michael Dyson, he doesn't believe in the legitimacy of hip-hop or hip-hop's message, and therefore he can't take it seriously? There's no way that Kendrick Lamar was able to deliver a message that had true intellect to it, that had true power to it, that had true messaging behind it. Maybe because he's not, he didn't write books and all this different stuff. Maybe that's what it is. All I know is there's a bunch of different things to point to. Okay, there's a bunch of things we can point to that could be the reason that Michael Dyson is acting like this. It's easy to say because of the allegiances, and that's simply because of the hypocrisy. You feel what I'm saying? That's simply because of the hypocrisy. That it's like, you might be being put up to this. But clearly, he's clearly able to break down the understanding of Not Like Us. Not Like Us is not about de-blacking Drake. As a matter of fact, the entire battle was never about de-blacking Drake. If it was, he wouldn't have called Adonis a black man. Between Drake and his partner that he decided to have a child with, right? The blackness is clearly in response to Drake's blackness, right? Otherwise, Adonis wouldn't be able to be a black man, okay? However, when you start talking about, I hate when you say the word nigga, that's clearly a black American thing. The word nigga being spun into something in terms of endearment, and I'm not gonna lie, not always in terms of endearment, but something that black people use themselves, right? That's a black American thing. So, of course, when somebody from outside of the country is using it in that sense, it does come off a little like, right? It doesn't mean that you're not black. It's just like, clearly your understanding of this is different than our understanding of this. And there's nothing wrong with saying that. As a matter of fact, that's common sense. But in today's time, aligning with your construct, right? Whatever construct that you believe in, that you're trapped in, is more important than common sense. In this reality, in this whole social media internet thing. That's a fact. You aligning with your construct is more important than common sense. And clearly you can see that in Michael Dyson. You can see that whatever construct that he's aligning himself with has erased his common sense. Because in this video, he has common sense. Let's watch it one more time.
And so you don't
A willingness to engage.
I mean, that's his personality. That's that Hawaiian chill out personality. And that's also he ain't got the same kind of ethos, pathos, pain, hurt, and agony that black people have had. I'm not saying he's not black. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying he ain't truly black. He is. Blacker than a lot of black people I know. But he didn't have that existential misery growing up in the same way. He doesn't have the same anger necessarily that black people have. That we are outraged by this stuff. He didn't feel it in his gut the same way. I'm not saying he ain't black. He's blacker than black. I've known Obama since '92, one of the blackest dudes I know. But what I'm saying is that your being black ain't got nothing to do with the kind of blackness and the kind of experience that you had and endured. And so you don't feel driven to speak out. Look.
And this is what I'm saying, brother. Why can't you apply that to Drake? Right? Number one. Excuse me. Number one, right? That's why he doesn't feel driven to speak out. Drake never speaks on anything political. He never speaks on any issues that actually going on in the black community. And nobody's saying he has to, right? I get it. You don't gotta, if that's not the artist you want to be, whatever, fine. You feel what I'm saying? I have a different idea what hip hop is supposed to be. If you don't want to be that type of artist, fine. But when somebody mentions it, right? Why is there so much fight back, right? Like you're able to understand that in Obama's case, this is the thing, but you can't understand this about Drake, somebody who's born in Canada. Is it because he has family who lives in America? Look, I have people in my family who was doing better than I was doing, who was doing better than we was doing. But when I go to their house, right, and I learn the things from them, this doesn't automatically mean that I'm entitled to that way of living, and I don't even want to say entitled, but I'm accustomed to that way of living, or I'm in line with that experience, right? Because at the end of the day, I still got to go back home. And I'm not saying home was bad all the time. All I'm saying is that's two different experiences. You get what I'm saying? Two completely different households with two completely different experiences. There's no difference with Drake going to his dad's house in Memphis when 90% of the time that he's spending is with his mom in Canada, bro. Like, that's common sense, bro. It's common sense, bro. If you spend most of your time at one household, you are going to be more accustomed to the rules, to the nuances, and to the customs of that household, nigga. That's not crazy to understand. I don't care if Drake got 15 family members who worked with Prince and shook Michael Jackson's hand and gave a hug to I don't care about none of that, because in reality, that doesn't mean anything. Okay? Yes, he has a lineage that worked with black musicians. That's awesome. Your experience is in Canada with your mother, and that's okay. This is why it was easier to listen to Drake's music when he was first coming out, because he didn't shy away from that. Drake didn't shy away from saying, yes, I did deal with this from my understanding of being black, but also my understanding of being Jewish. I did understand that. I did understand there was a difference between me being Jewish and me being white. I did learn that. Drake didn't shy away from any of this. So in reality, it made him really more relatable to people, even if they don't deal with that same level of construct. You can deal with that construct from being poor and being in association with people who got money. With being, and you feel what I'm saying? So that's why it was easier to listen to Drake back then, and I think that's why people loved Drake more back then, right? But now a lot of his celebrity, a lot of his art is tied to the marketing of his art, and it's not a lot of long-staying stuff. Okay? So I don't understand why Michael Dyson can't comprehend that. You're saying the same thing Kendrick was saying, bruh. You're saying the same thing. So is it allegiance? Is it a change in perspective? Which one is it? You feel what I'm saying? I'm curious to know. I'm curious to hear a fleshed out explanation because I don't give a what side. I love hearing people's authenticity and what they got to say because I like to learn about humanity in totality. You get what I'm saying? So I'm not mad at an authentic perspective. You saying what you got to say, even if it doesn't align with mine. How am I supposed to learn if I can't hear what you got to say? Right? And still have the wherewithal to be comfortable in my perspective, right? Unless you provide some information that clearly is common sense information. It's the same thing like when you look through religion and you got this, people tell you the Bible is the only truth or Mormon is the only truth. When in reality, all these different religions got truth in them. But if in some parts they all saying the same thing, that's probably the truth. You get what I'm saying? That's my perspective. And I'm not telling anybody else they got to have theirs. But that's common sense. So I just wonder where this perspective changes for Michael Dyson. You get what I'm saying? That's all you know what I mean? That's what I'm concerned about. Where is this perspective at when it comes to dissecting what Kendrick was saying about Drake? Considering you were able to completely understand that when it came to your perspective about Obama. That's it. That's it. Thank y'all for coming. Like, comment, subscribe, especially if you're new here, especially if you've been here. Thank you to everybody that's been checking out my song, F Ice, you feel what I'm saying? If you don't like the stream, you can download it on Bandcamp. You feel what I'm saying? Thank you to everybody that's been showing love. And yeah, bro, like, Michael Dyson, I'm just very curious. You feel what I'm saying? But thank y'all. Appreciate y'all. I'm going to catch y'all later.